Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Hello, you horny little devils out there. Me and my raspy voice today. I hope you are enjoying this. Well, at least on the East Coast, extremely cold weather. All of a sudden, it's got a little bit nippy, but being able to stay in the house and to relax in some big fluffy slippers and a house coat with a nice warm blanket, kind of sort of helps it along. But it's also a way in which to give you time to snuggle up under those blankets and housecoats and stuff with your little sweetie, or by yourself with your favorite dildo, vibrator, whatever you want. Completely up to you, or just your hand. Hey, they're made for a reason. They're there. So, they are articulate, so use them. Now, I talk a lot of fetishes on here, and I know I've touched a little bit on like furries, and a lot of people, furries have been quite, popular in latest days and times, so to speak, whereas before that was that, you got looked at with the "what are you doing" type eyes. And this fetish has become very, very popular. Now there are two levels of this, whereas fursuits versus what is called a mersuit, M-U-R-R-S-U-I-T. Now there are differences between the two, and yes, it is sexual. So remember that when you are deciding on possibly which part of this kink you want to go on, because the mersuit is more a sexually based fur suit role playing, and this is where you need to really begin, because you need to know where in which you want to be in that. But fursuits are quite fun, and they are very widely known now. They've come a long way. A lot of conventions out there that they have all over the world. Obviously have not had any within the last year or more due to COVID. Although, if you thought about it, they're wearing a costume and a full mask over their head. They would be doubly protected. However, their handle is on the other hand, and you do get a lot of people who are not in costume that do go to the convention that are possibly looking for it, or just really like the merchandise, or, it could go anywhere. But, what's funny is these, although they do make their own tail, and connected to the fursuit, a full fursuit, or shall we say mersuit, you could probably go and get a rubber. They probably wear it where there's a rubber or a full the rendition of like a butt plug tail for the tail. But with that, we are just going to give a little definition here and there, and we'll discuss all, pricing for these suits. If you're going to commission someone out on the fur side of this, and also on the mersuit side of this, they're on Etsy, they are online, there's YouTube videos, there's all kinds of things. But when you talk about a mersuit, it's kind of sort of contains this various types of suits. There's the fursuit that's in there, and then there's lycra, spandex, PVC, leather, rubber, depending on which way you want to go with it. Obviously, the term is derived from mur, M-U-R-R, which is an expression often used within the furry fandom. And this is usually like a sound of contentment, like a purr, like a kitten makes. This is where the mersuits come from, because there is a sexual content to it. But there are sometimes, this is mainly the indication of it, and that there is sexual interest or arousal, and that's why it's called a mersuit, because the mersuit is fauceted where sexual body parts can be portrayed and displayed, shall I say, on the outside of the fursuit. And there are, if you go on to Etsy, you will find different, like, brief underwears for men and underwears for women, or sexual vaginas or penises that are made up in this. And if you look at an animal, when they get aroused, there's this little pink thing that comes out, which is their erection. It extends. And those are actually made for these mersuits, so that when it comes to the sex, the fursuit, or the mersuit, will indicate that as well. And they're pretty interesting to see. I do go on there and look them up. The difference between the mersuits and the fursuits. Obviously, mersuits generally refers to fursuits of a sexual nature. And there are a few people out there, like I said, who are well known for constructing and making such suits so that it does fit that. And a lot of them don't like to go and advertise that, because a lot of them are basically doing it out of their homes. The suits become sexually modified in the sense for sexual encounters and acts. So, in the fursuit, well, obviously the mersuit is worn, and it is any fursuit that has been worn while having sex, irrespective of the suit's construction, obviously. There are a couple of websites out there that are willing to, do this professionally, and it's mersuits.info or Furry and Fursona. Let's click on here. It is, it's actually Murray Purry is, it's described as an all-encompassing, demeaning term to describe any furry situation, media group, in a sarcastic, syrupy fashion. Oh, isn't that so Murray Purry? Oh, this image needs more Murray Purry goodness. So there is a meaning behind the things that the indications that they use in the wording. So it's a fursuit is one thing where you're going to dress up in just plain fursuit as your favorite animal per se. Like mostly they're dogs or wolves or there are kitty cats out there, and they're basically altered and made to the wearer's specifications and characteristics and personality and you name it. And they can, you go out with those. They're not sexually and have any demeanor to them. However, the mer suit takes that fur suit into a whole different realm of sexuality. And just to clear up the questions and the thoughts and the processes and everything that you've heard regarding fursuits, yes, some of the furries who wear fursuits and go to conventions do engage in some sort of sexual acts, whether it just be the dry humping or the overall animal, what do you want to call it, orgy. They do have rooms separated out for those in the conventions. So you're going to get the mer suits at the fursuit conventions. It's most likely always going to bring that up. Now, if you're going to try making this yourself, obviously you're going to make it to your specifications the way you like it. But if you do get somebody outside who's going to construct this suit for you, and they're taking your fursuit and they're modifying it for YIF is what they call it. And what it is, they take the fursuit and they would call a hole for where the penis to come out, and one for anal sex hole, and this one's going to be toe. For the women, obviously there's a hole for the vagina cut out of it and a hole for anal as well. It's funny because it's only a small amount of furries actually own a mersuit, because it's probably where they want to stay at home with their respective partner and act it out there. So that's it might be what they want to do and how they want to work with that. Maybe not. I mean, it's what it is. You just can't really say that. I mean, this is something where you're kind of bringing out your personality and you're not exactly losing completely who you are. But yes, they do act out the animal role play in it when you go to these conventions, but they're more of taking that fursuit and it's on all two legs, a bipedal, and when you're doing the role play of an animal, you would more likely be on all fours, because obviously it's all fours if you're going to wear a dog or a wolf or something along that line, or a cat. But yes, there is that portion of it. But when you go to these conventions, it's more of the furries are showcasing their suits and, getting commissions. And you see a lot of people at the art den, and it's like any other convention. You go and you buy your supplies and everything, so you make your own fursuit. Mersuits, it's more of an elite. You're not gonna, I'm sure there's conventions everywhere, but they're a little bit more on the lay low and more into the, what's it called? In-home acting out. But they will go and do, either they make their own fursuit or they do commission somebody to have it done. And they may take the fursuit and alter it or a mersuit, or they might just outreach to somebody who will make the suit. But what does a fursuit, what is a fursuit, which I've really explained, and, what does it have to do with that? Well, obviously, being in furries, obviously with any role playing, you are able to show a level of confidence and a level of being able to basically present your sexuality without being judged. And you can live out this and act on this with no inhibition per se. You kind of lose that because you're able to create yourselves through your art. Your fursuit is your art. Obviously, if you go out into a fursuit convention, a furry convention, as opposed to the mersuit, obviously it's a little bit more when it comes to the mersuit, and it's being done behind closed doors. So you've got to look at it that way. On that note, and we will come back to our subject matter in the world of furry Murrays, or furries, versus Murrays, Murray Purry, shall we say. So we are going to take our first break in the show. Please go get something to drink, something to eat, and then come back, get relaxed, because I will meet you back here for more Sex Talk with Andra.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Our topic today is in the land of mersuits. Yes, it's in the land of furry, but a little bit more in there. Mer is a sexy murmur. A mersuit is a fursuit equipped for yipping with SPHs, which is strategically placed holes. And yipping obviously is the act of having sex through these holes in a fursuit. Now, there are a lot of slings that go along with furries and Murrays, if you want to go there. And we're going to go over these. These are slings that, are geared at the fur fandom. And so that if you feel that you're going to get into this, you need to know a few of the slings so that you don't go in there blindsided for the most part and somebody starts talking to you and you're like, what? So, obviously, Furry Fandom is on the top of the list. You obviously need to know what you're getting into and exactly what it is. And this is a collection or a community of people who find fascination with anthropomorphic animals in some way. Obviously, this can be expressed in different ways, in either art, costuming, writing, music, and all kinds of things that would be focused and geared towards furries. Now, obviously, out of that dictionary, which is a very long word and sometimes tongue-tieable, whereas, look, I'm making up my own, anthropomorphic. Okay, now, this is ascribing, believe it or not, this is how it is defined, ascribing human characteristics to non-human things. So obviously you have the anthropomorphic, but the morphic is you're morphing. This, you can go from very, very small things like just making a thing, a fursuit have a human expression, talk, or just to show human emotions, and obviously our cartoons today show a lot of that. Like, we feel a lot of emotion through them. Obviously, Walt Disney is very good for doing this, and they've always stated that he has something underlining in his cartoons, but they were all, but all the children love them. So yeah. Now, obviously this goes on to show examples of this. Obviously, The Lion King, even though they were on all fours, it still showed them. They think and talk like humans, and they're giving off human expressions within that. So, and then there's the walking on two legs, or having human esquica. I'm probably saying that because I've never seen it. Human-esque. Oh, there is a smudge over the word. Human-esque body. So remember Robin Hood? Oh, this is an old cartoon. Disney's Robin Hood, he was a fox, and they were all animals walking on 2 feet. Again, animals are generally on 4 feet, 4 paws, or hands and feet, however you want to call them. So let's go on, and let's break down that word. In anthro, a shortening for, obviously, the big word. So you'll see a lot of them saying the anthro. And this is generally used to describe a character with more human features and bipedal, which means standing on 2 feet. Feral, which most people know or associate that with a wild animal, a feral cat. But in this, it is a term used for characters that walk as their species naturally. So obviously, if a dog walks on all 4, then it's like a dog. The furry is like a dog, or the mersuit, like a dog, is feral. Then we come down to, obviously, furry, and it's just a member of the Furry Fandom. It's also described as like characters, art, music, etc. Because if you go to the convention or even look them up, you will find that a lot of the individuals there are expressing their love for the art and fandom of it. So we have scaly. Oh, that one seems to be interesting. Scaly. And this is to describe a furry character that doesn't have fur. Obviously, people dress up as lizards or snakes, avians, and marines have been used to describe bird and aquatic characteristics, but it's not their official usage. So, and it's not really consistent. A lot of things are all different, and things like in any culture, sexually or anywhere else, things do change and have different meanings amongst different cultures. Lifestyler. This is an individual who may personally identify with an animal or animals on a deeper level, whereas it's a human being, but they are very close to animals and act out that way. And they also are those who see the fandom on a more serious level. They take it a lot more deeper instead of just if there's a convention for like a weekend or a day. They don't take it that they take it for as it takes on a large portion of their life, and it is essential to their life as well. Other kin slash Therian is a person who identifies as partially or entirely non-human. And this obviously can be spiritual, or even so far as believing that you yourself or someone else is a non-human animal in a human body. So there's always an animal instinct in all of us, and you'll hear that expression, let your inner animal out, especially in the bedroom, and that's where that will come in. Lifestylers, Therians, and like other kin, they're not inherently furries, nor murries, if you want to call them that. And they don't really have beliefs related to this fandom. So it's more of they're not really being a member of that, but they identify with the animals. Original character, or OC. And this is a character that's made by another person. That is original. Most of the individuals who make these suits actually put their own little spin on them, and they will ask the individuals for who they're making them for how they want it to look, or how they want it designed, or what mix or breed of animal you want. And then when it comes to the genitals, if it's a female who wants to be male and a male who wants to be female, they'll put them that way as well, and pick the holes and strategically place them as that and design them in that manner to represent that sexual part. So obviously in both there is a level of role play, RP, and it's an activity, whereas the participants assume the roles of the character and collaboratively create stories. We all know what role play is. Doesn't matter where it comes, how it comes. When it comes into mersuits and Murray or Furry Fandom, it gets a little bit more deeper. It's kind of, most people maintain their verbal, outwardly human language with it. Or some will actually remain in character with all the sounds, the moans, the purrs, the groans, the growls, anything that goes with that animal. And if they're a mixed breed, shall we say, playing around the fursuit genetics, obviously they can make up their own that would go appropriately with that. So NSFW stands for not safe for work. You could probably lose your job over that. Adult, aka adult stuffs. Sex, nudity, fits into this category. So if you are into mersuits, obviously, if you go into a costume party, you're not going to wear that suit there. Especially if it's a work party or whatever. And yeah, you're not going to do that. Obviously, when you are, most artists in this will exaggerate those sexual parts and that sex aspect of this. And it becomes very sexual, but they are very much told to basically label this NSF8 FW. Also, generally you have to be 18 or older in order to view the art as well. And it's really hard sometimes, especially if it's coming through the internet, because for the most part you can lie on the internet with your age, and some people are very good at it. We don't want that. It's not necessary, but it's very good to have. But contrarily, SFW, which means safe for work, is very good to also use if in fact it is. So there are two ways to look at NSFW, not safe for work, or SFW, safe for work. And please have your person label their things. Fursona obviously is a combination of furry and persona. It is the technical term, and it is used by a majority of those in this fandom and in this lifestyle. Obviously, a fursona is an original character that represents some aspect of all aspects of the creator's personality or complexion. So you really are taking that mersuit, you're making it to you, as well as if you're just going to take this on the furry side of things. But we are discussing mersuits, so you're going to take this. For the most part, you are asking, or you are designing your suit to match up to your personality and how you're going to portray that in the bedroom and sexually. So you're kind of sort of giving yourself putting part of you into that, whereas your partner or partners will identify or get some sense of who you are or what you are. So there are all kinds of different personas out there. Please pick what's best for you, because remember, you're using it, you're wearing it, and you are portraying this sexually in the bedroom. So it's this particular type of sex play allows for that for you to, lose your inhibitions, have so much confidence while you're in character, and to let what sexuality you want out. So, and that's why these holes are put there, because you can put which ones that you want. Completely up to you. Obviously, when it comes down to making these, you commission somebody to make them, so meaning that you're actually paying someone to make this fursuit for you by your specifications. And it is a piece of art, so there's going to be some sort of branding in there. Obviously, you're requesting to make this custom piece of work, and you're not, and it's really weird, because request actually takes on somewhat of a different, whereas they're explaining it as the act of an artist or an artisan providing a custom work for free, because you are putting it out there and letting people see their work. So you're kind of sort of advertising for them. On that note, we are going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll finish up with our fandom or mersuit slang and move along, and talk about the sex in it. So please replenish your drink, replenish your snack, come back, get relaxed again, put that hand back where it was, or just stay there and finish out. But I will still meet you back here for more Sex Talk with Andra.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back in our lovely delving into the furry mersuit fandom culture. And that's what it is. It is a culture, but it is also role-playing. So, remember with role-playing, always have consent. Because I know that some people will go a little further when being in this role, or any role that you take on, which has to do with sex. So just make sure that you, obviously, if you're new to it, where you are, educate yourself, communicate, and consent. Very, very important, especially when sex is involved. So we were discussing the different slangs associated with this lifestyle. And obviously we were in the part of the artists themselves, obviously art trade, and if you know what those are, and most people do, is where two artists, it's the act of two artists trading goods and services, basically. And there is a lot of that with this, because a lot of these artists want to get their ideas out there and brought to fruition through a fursuit, through mersuit, through all of this. So remember that. And, there is a difference between the two, fursuit and mersuits, and the fandom associated with both. But in a sense, some people start in the furry end of it and get turned on to the mersuit end of it, and will alter their suits to do that. So remember that, and you always ask pricing and all that good stuff. So TOS, terms of service, which with any service, we know what that is. Thank you very much. Always read the artist's terms of service. Now, we all know what a fursuit is, a costume similar to a mascot costume that is normally made to fit a custom body type / side. Already talks about that. There is always, behind mersuits and fursuits, there is always a character design, because you want to be as original on what you want and what you're going to portray in that role. So always do this. Always, colors are a big factor. What you're wearing is a big factor. How you're going to wear it is a big factor. How you want to portray that in that role. But obviously, it is not required to have either a fursuit or a mersuit. It's not required. However, if you want to get fully into the role playing, it would be wise for you to do it. A fursuiter, obviously, is the person who wears it. Fursuiting is performing in a fursuit or a mersuit. Obviously, mersuit, a fursuit designed and used for sexual purposes. A mersuiter is someone who uses such a suit, obviously, because they're wearing it. Remember, fursuit is not equal to a mersuit. It's not different on like heads and things like that, but when it becomes a mersuit, you're obviously altering it for sexual purposes. You do not do that with a fursuit. Handler, obviously, also called a spotter, is the person who is not in the suit, who's generally holding the leash or performing the act. When it comes to mersuits, obviously, one can be in and one can be out of suit, but for the most part, they remain both in suit. So that's the whole idea of it. There are lots of videos out there. Do look them up. Lots of conventions out there if you want to start slow to figure out the culture, to see the culture, something that you've been thinking about and want to do. It would be wise for you to go to a convention first and do it as a fursuit convention, like they have the Anthrocon that's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pop you fur, obviously, is another slang that they use, and this is being included here because of how much it is used, and it is actually looked down upon. It's a looked down upon term used for those who are well known in the fandom, popular as developed a negative connotation. Yeah, they have their negatives and their positives, as with every culture, so remember that. It doesn't really mean that it has anything to do with the person who's actually wearing the suit. So, and most of the times you won't even know what's under there and what they look like, because you are meeting or seeing this for the first time. Yif, obviously, originally a word to mean happy or other similar good feelings, but believe it or not, this was changed. This word was particularly changed when it was used in furry chats to describe sex. So if you are talking to somebody, you hear the word yif, they're talking sex, dear, or some sort of sexual activity. So, and that's what you go with. Mer, obviously, I went over this one. A word to show a sexual appeal to something. And there you go. Oh, mer. This, you're probably saying, oh, ain't she fine, or ain't he fine, or whatever. You say mer. Gray muzzled. Alright. It's actually an older member of the Furry Fandom. So, and it's usually someone 40 years of age, over 40 years of age, and who is still particularly participating in this. It's too funny. Badge, obviously, badge means the same, but this is an art piece of a character, and you can go into these conventions, and there's generally a lot of individuals out there who are sell their art of their character in a badge form where you can buy it from them and supporting them, which is always very good. Con badge, obviously, is the badge that you get. It's almost like your ticket into the convention. So, and it's not sometimes they have contests, from my understanding, where they will pick someone's art and put it on the badge, but for the most part, it's your ticket into the convention, and obviously they're in with suit where it becomes a tag. So, Fur Affinity. It's also called FA, and this is an art site for the Furry Fandom. So go on there and look it up. There are other art sites for this, which if you aren't looking to get into this, that you might want to look into here first, which is Weasel, and it's with a Y as opposed to an A at the end. WEASYL. So Furry is another one, and Ink Buddy. Bunny, Ink Bunny. And then there's, last but not least, but Furry for Life, also called F4L. And it is a chat site, okay? Also, For Nation is another chat site that's out there that is devoted to the little furries or merch sites and things like that. You put it into Google, you will get a lot of it. So it's something that you really need to, it's one thing to go out and go with a Halloween costume where you're just dressing up as your favorite character and all. But it's another to take on a persona of this, and it's another to take that into the sexual world. So you're not just going to very well walk outside in a costume, a mer costume. You might get arrested for indecent exposure. Not a very good thing that you want to do. Remember that. And there are a lot of things out there that people will not think twice about doing, especially as how deep they are going into that role play. Obviously, if it is a friend's house that you're going to a costume party and they are all on the same wavelength, or it's just an adult party, obviously you're not going to get shunned to some extent there, but do watch out because not everybody is the same. Okay, now we're just going to go over some newcomer guide terms and customs and things like that to the furry Murray thing to go with. If you are looking to get in, obviously with everything, research it because you need to educate yourself about it. There are more here where Wurs, Otherkin, Brownies, and Planties. And these are fandoms, and they're usually lumped together with furries, but they are not the same. So they take on a different persona, and obviously other parts of things, whereas ponies, and there's a whole world on that which I discussed already. We have our fleshies/smoothies, outsiders to the fandom world, and they usually either call Steve or Steves. There's a lot of stuff out there you can look up in this world, especially sexually, because it's something that you could take a regular character that you see and that you like and maybe you grew up with and turn it into your character. But remember that you really need to learn about it first, just like with everything else. And you don't want to insult or, be respectful, because that's what it's all about. And putting yourself out there and having an understanding of what it is all about. It's almost just like somebody, being in tune with other people's cultures and the like. You want them to respect you as you respect them. So it's basically, don't be rude. Don't go out there and be disrespectful for that person, because this is kind of sort of another society within a society, whereas it's being acted out, and they are very in tune and very into what they are doing. This is a lot of artwork goes into this. If you want to look at this, granted it's all sex and you work out your doggy side, and the meaning of doggy style really comes into play here. So you really need to think before you go into anything, and knowing all about it. They are, with this, mersuit's much more expressive, and obviously there's a lot of things that come in if you're not very big on that openly sex portion of your life yet. Then this, going the smaller route, going to a furry convention as opposed to basically jumping into a mersuit convention or the like, and learning about it first. And this will get you and help you to feel a little bit more better about it, because in these suits you become confident and you can just let everything go, like I said earlier. On that note, we're going to take the last break in the show. So, completely up to you if you want to go get something else to drink. You might need it, or something to eat to replenish your strength, or just finish out what you started. But I am still going to meet you back here for more sex talk with Andra to finish out the show.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back to the final segment in the show today, where we are discussing the world of furry fandom, but from the sexual point of view, where we're going into the mersuit, whereas it's a fursuit with holes cut out, and actually where you can have it designed to look exactly like a female part or a male penis. Fursuit, also in hole, but in for the anal entryway, or anal sex, obviously, and how this has really taken on its own little culture in there, and it's going on, and it's going on there. And when it's kind of hard when you do go online to research this, because I did a little research in between a break, and it's really, if you put in mersuit, it kind of reverts to fursuit, but there's a difference between the two. And mersuits obviously has the sexual component of it, and the sexual act, and it's more a visual. So going online and researching this, there are a lot of communities that you might want to become a part of if you're thinking about this, but do take it up slowly. Obviously, maybe start on the fursuit aspect of it, the furry, and then break away from that and start altering your fursuit into that mersuit, or you have an individual, an artist who you like their work, have them make you two suits, one for your furry side and one for your mersuit side, your sexual side of the culture. Now, obviously, a lot of these are of video in nature because watching them, unless you're extremely well endowed, obviously a lot of thought processes going on out there. Is the suit's going to get in the way? Yes, it is. And a lot of people get into this because they have an affinity for stuffed animals. So remember that as well. But they do have sheaths out there that you can use and attach to your suit that extends out and extends your penis, so that in intercourse or sexual penetration, is actually a lot easier to do and a lot easier to perform, shall I say. Obviously, they still relate the mersuit, and they don't even say mersuit sex. It's generally called fursuit sex or fursuited sex, which is originally known as zoot sex, or zootophilia, because there is a philia, a fetish, involved with this kink. And zootophilia is actually a furry speak term to describe the performance or stimulated or not of sexual interactions while one or all parties involved wearing fursuits, obviously. Individuals performing this act in the fursuit while back were originally called zooters or zootphilias. So remember that. It's actually a paraphilia, and it's actually practiced by a very small subset of the furry community. So this is probably why having so much difficulties researching this topic comes into play, because it is such a small subset of the furry community. Because, like I said, a lot of this is art-based, and getting commissioned and putting it out there, seeing the different styles of artists and suits that are out there, how you're going to portray this animal is there. Obviously, the act with this fursuit is that sexual activity, and it consists of either clothed genital all the way up to genital stimulation, which can either be non-penetrative sex or just dry humping, which I mentioned earlier, or that actual sexual intercourse via plushophile, plushophile-like or SPH, strategically placed holes. It all comes down to the holes. It all comes down. If you go onto YouTube, YouTube, you'll find a lot of stuff, because that's one of the places it comes up. But a lot of this sexual activity is in videos only for the most part. But if you also go onto Etsy, it is branching out, because Etsy, you can go in there and put in mersuit, and you will see the different types of designs that actually, complement the fursuit, the holes and how you want to protect it and actually have a visualization, because the fursuit is going to cover up the vagina. It's going to cover up the penis if you're not so fully endowed. But it does play and help. Obviously, the suit is quite bulky from just looking at it. And trying to work your way around that, especially if both of you are in mersuits. The tail is filled with batting and fluff, so that is going to, you got to find ways to basically move around. You're wearing paws, so granted you're using them within the act, which is a turn on to your partner, I'm assured. The petting part of it. However, working with items like lubricant and dildos or things along that side, you probably would have to take off your paws, to actually do it completely and get your groove on, shall I say, and to have that sexual feeling and the full effect of it. So remember that this is a lifestyle, but it's an alternative lifestyle. And it's something that you really need to feel comfortable with. You'll find it a lot where someone comes in and they're into it and you meet them and you go to a harmless little furry convention, and because like I said, a lot of the time people are putting it together and it shouldn't be, because it is two different things. But then they start slowly bringing it out that they're this way, or they'll ask you to wear this or do that. You really need to educate yourself on it. And don't force it on your new partner, and don't force it on your old partner either. If it's something that, all of a sudden you have found to catch your eye and of interest, very, very, it will be the same as if it was a new partner. Don't just throw it into the sexual bed. Actually sit down, play that game and put it in there where you're putting suggestions of your fantasies in there and pick them out and have that in there and see what response you get. But do talk it over with your partner, any partner that is. It is a big role play, but then again, there is a lot more to it. It is very difficult, I'm assured, being in a suit and you're getting hot and bothered to begin with, and sex can be really sweaty and slimy, and you're trying to breathe within a suit, I would presume, and you got to make sure you have very good ventilation in there. And as with most men, they like to have their partners perform oral sex on them. So obviously you have a snout or a longer nose and mouth area, shall I say, which could accommodate it a lot easier. But how much of that do you care is straight mersuit and compared to actual oral stimulation from your partner's mouth? This is where you need to really get into it and discuss this. There is, especially when it comes to mersuits, and I touched on this just very briefly when I first started this segment, but a lot of people who are into mersuits have this devoted appreciation of a love for stuffed animals, and it's really affiliated with plushophilia, or plushies or whatever, that plush toy, and they are generally called plushophiles. So remember that. And there are, so look these up. This is where, if you go on there and you go in and you're researching this, and this is something that you want to try, research mersuits first, or mersuit sex, and watch videos, see the difference in it, and with everything, the turn on fluctuates between individuals, because if you're trying it with someone new, or even with your partners you've been with for years, and all of a sudden you were trying to, swap stuff over in the bedroom and get a little bit more frisky, and you want to try it, you really need to do your research with this. This isn't something you're asking an individual to be. Granted, there's times where you're, getting off and you're all dressed, dry humping your way to it. That's not an unknown factor. I think everybody in the world has had sex that way, the non-penetrative way. But if you literally are serious about a mersuit, then that would mean that you are willing to alter and have the holes necessary, even go so far as to have on the persona in the visualization of that, which you can have put into the pursuit and sewn in, or you can buy the underwear, if you want to call them that. The altered underwear, how's that one sound? The altered underwear, and have them specially made where you just wear them over your suit. There's where the differences come in. You're asking your partner to have sex with you, which is not the problem, but an individual's knowledge and of sex and all of that generally goes with the penis and vagina, back and forth, oral sex, anal sex, and skin to skin. Whereas in mersuits, you are technically skin to skin in a sense, if you want to put it that way, because you're taking, if both of you are wearing animal suits, you fur to fur. But it is still, I'm assured everybody has seen two dogs going at it. And what do? You get a hose and you hit them with the hose so that they separate. This is, you gotta have that visualization. Let's not go that far with that. Do have a great affinity and appreciation for this, because a lot of people put their hard work into making these suits. Also, if you're just going to stay on the furry side of it where there is no sex involvement, again, this is an artist. You may be that artist who has made this suit. Have an appreciation for it, just like with all kinds of art. There is an appreciation with it. There is a culture with it, and respect that for that. So, unfortunately, that is the end of my show. As usual, if trying anything new in the sexual realm of things, or in the bedroom with a new or an old partner, please educate, communicate, and mostly have consent, and make sure you put out there and communicate those expectations of what you want in the bedroom from that sexual act, by the way. Also, please do practice safe sex, if not for yourself, for your partner, and vice versa. Again, I would like to thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Please hit the little subscribe button there, and please leave 5 stars. A very good review. Love to see those. Also, because it not only helps me, but it does help the GSMC Podcast Network in knowing what to bring their audience and what the audience wants to hear. Also, please seek us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because we are there as well. Please leave comments. Let us know what you want to hear or what you want to discuss. Always hit that little thumbs up also, or that little heart, because you love us. And with that, I would like to say thank you again for tuning in, and have an awesome sex night anyway you like it. Until next time, enjoy yourself, and good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.